So while Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was just
Alright, so at this point I guess I sort of began a shift. In the first couple of videos I would, crack a couple of jokes and, use some swear words on occasion. I think it was about this time I decided I kind of wanted to make this seem more professional, almost kind of like a documentary. So, as you can see I did some more camera things like zooming in on images and things like that. And cut out on things like humor and swearing and try to make it seem more professional. I don't know if that's made it any better or worse, but that's just sort of what happens when you sort of make this thing up as you go along. So it might be a little inconsistent with the previous two parts, I'm not sure. But in terms of inconsistency, this is where I started to worry about what exactly it was I was trying to do with this series overall. And what exactly I was trying to tell my audience and what they wanted to see. Because this is pretty much the exact opposite of the approach I took in the previous video, where in that video was going over all the plot in detail and comparing it to the plot of Power Rangers. And it was really, really heavily focused on the plot of the Sentai series. Whereas, as you can see in this one, there really isn't much focus on the plot of Dairanger at all. And of course that's because its plot has really no basis for the plot of Power Rangers. And so I guess if you're coming here to find out what the Sentai series was about plot-wise, this isn't really as informative as the Zhu 2 video. But I guess I sort of decided in this video to focus specifically on how Power Rangers became Power Rangers, what elements they had to cannibalize from the Sentai series in order to make this. And that was what was most interesting to me. And in fact, this is probably my favorite video of the entire series because it's just so crazy how they made this season. It's really exciting to sort of deconstruct it and find out the tricks they used and the problems they ran into, and so it really is, so it does sort of become more Power Rangers centric at this point, but I'm hoping that just because it sort of gets into the sort of meat, the behind the scenes things, that maybe it sort of accomplishes what people wanted it to accomplish.
Zed has nothing to do with Dairanger. He's a completely American creation.
Season 2 was still exciting. I think it was more exciting than the Zhu 2 part of Season 1. Just because there were so many new changes. I did know that Scorpina does appear in one episode of Season 2, and I did know that as I was making this video. I just didn't have time to include it in here. I have no idea why she appears. It's like halfway through the season. It's after the cast changeover happens. They bring back Scorpina for one episode where she plays, like, disguises herself as Adam's new girlfriend or something, and then it's a different actress, obviously, and they bring her back for this one episode, and they even reference the fact that the new characters don't know who she is. And then as quickly as she appears, she disappears again. As a kid, I always wondered why she disappeared, and now I know why. I just don't know why they decided to bring her back for one episode. It just doesn't make any sense. If they had plans to bring her back on a full-time basis but decided it wouldn't work, or if they just wanted to have one nod to her to explain, well, sort of acknowledge the fact that she'd been gone. Anyway, yeah, reverse angle syndrome is a term that I coined, based on the film terminology that I know, because I did study theater and film in college. I'm hoping the catches on, I don't know, just to refer to this, because it is basically what it is. They just use have it play out in reverse angles. But it was just fun getting to really watch all these episodes and really see the seams in there, and that's what really made it the most exciting to me. Now, because before I'd done any of the videos, I'd finished watching all of Zyuranger. I'd gone through the entire thing. To this day, I have not watched all of Dairanger. I only watched Dairanger up to the point where Ko shows up. Because, to be quite honest, that's the last part of Dairanger that has any impact on Power Rangers at all. It took me a long time to get it took several takes to get that line right, that deep voice for the Tiger Zord thing.
But I'll get to why I think that in a minute. So going back to Dairanger, they eventually did get a 6.
Yeah, it is kind of funny how people criticize Power Rangers Turbo for having a kid, Justin, as a ranger, when they obviously got this idea from this. And it's really funny when you watch episodes of Power Rangers with the White Ranger, and when he uses the Sentai footage, you can very clearly see it's really weird Tommy just jumping around acting like a little kid, because obviously it is a little kid here. And I couldn't. There was one episode I saw when preparing for this video where you can, if you know what you're looking for, you can actually see the White Ranger using a skateboard, which is obviously Ko's skateboard. You can not really clear, it's very hard to see. You can barely see it in like a couple of frames if you really slow it down, and it's hilarious. It's Ko's skateboard. There's no reason why Tommy would be using it, and they had to cut around very carefully to try to get that out of there, and you can just barely see it if you try. I don't remember what episode it is anymore. I don't remember what episode now. It was the episode where Rocky gets obsessed with pinball. It's kind of a really silly premise. But if you go to that episode and watch some White Ranger footage, you can barely see Ko's skateboard.
And now we use fully integrated Dairanger footage. Quite a bit of work, huh? Well, it was about to get...
At this point, yeah, there really isn't... This point in the video, there really isn't about Dairanger at all anymore. It's really about the stuff that happens behind the scenes in Power Rangers. And I ended up justifying it by saying that it was similar to have the sort of reverse angle tricks, and it's kind of funny that they ended up having to do the same thing just for their stuff that they had to do for the Dairanger footage. But this is really the reason that got me excited to do this in the first place. When I saw Mars Girl's video, this is one of the first things I went back to, because I remember watching this 8 years old as a kid, and watching it with my mom. And it's kind of funny because she usually doesn't pick up on these kind of subtle things, but as soon as Rocky, Aisha, and Adam showed up, she turns to me and says, "They're going to become Power Rangers, I just bet you they are." And I'm like, they can't become Power Rangers. That'd be 9 characters. You can't have 9 characters. That's way too many. And actually did come to pass, and I just didn't realize it came to pass in a way different than I expected. But it was because of that episode right there, because I always I'd heard pretty quickly afterwards that Jason, Trini, and Zach had been fired, but I always remembered seeing the episode where they passed off their powers. They were there. How did they do this? How could they have been fired if they were in the episode? And so I just, watched this as an adult. I was laughing at myself to not, because I felt that I was pretty easy. I had a good time picking up on these kind of things, even as a little kid. They never took off their costumes. They were all. It's just so obvious watching this. The voice doubles are terrible, especially Jason's. The one for Zach is pretty good, but the one for Jason just sounds, it's like a really big caricature of that sort of, I can't even do it, but it just is really terrible caricature of Jason's voice, and I have no idea how anybody watching this wouldn't be able to pick up on it, no matter how young they are.
That American actors and Japanese actors were interacting together. Now they were suddenly.
But this is about the point where I stopped watching the series. I don't know if it was because of the cast changeover, but I was still really big into Power Rangers at this point. I remember dressing up as the Red Ranger for Halloween. I still had the Thunderzord toys, and so I don't really know why. But this is about the time that I fell out of it. And this is probably the biggest bit of speculation I have in the entire series of videos. So I could be wrong about this whole thing. Maybe they did intend for Tommy to be the White Ranger. It is quite a bit of speculation. I don't know. There was one. I did read somewhere that the one time that Jason does say it's Morphin time after the White Ranger, there was a fight between Austin St. John and Jason Frank about that. That Austin was upset that his line was being taken away from him, and Jason Frank just went, "You can have it. I don't care." I don't know if that's true or not. Again, it's all just apocryphal things you hear around the internet. You never know what to believe. I still stand by my theory, but there is enough evidence, not evidence, but at least stories to the contrary, that it's possible I could be wrong. But it is funny watching these kinds of episodes, because I do mention later on in this video that once Tommy becomes the White Ranger, suddenly his green clothes become white, and that is true while the original actors are still there. But you'll notice, you can see in some of the clips I have up in here, that once you get to the point where they're having to cover up the actors having left the show, Tommy's suddenly in green again, and that's because they have to use stock footage from earlier in the season to cover up the fact that they're not there. So up until the time where Rocky, Aisha, and Adam take over the powers, you'll see Tommy continue to wear green, even though he's the White Ranger. And also, there's some inconsistencies with Zach's hair. At some point in the second season, he went from that sort of high Will Smith flat top kind of hairstyle with the fade on the back to the braids. I call it the braids because that's how his character on Space Case is referred to his hairstyle once he changed it in that show. But you'll see in some shots where he has that hairstyle, the other one where he has the older hairstyle in the same episode. He'll come back. He came back from like the planet where he had to get the sword, and then suddenly Zack's hair is like it was earlier in the season. It's really weird. So there were a lot of very obvious seams in how this sort of came together. And if you watch it with a critical eye, you can see, the clothes color changing and Zack's hair changing and the terrible voice doubles and the terrible body doubles. And gosh, I just feel like an idiot now watching this. But this is what really interested me to do this series, and I'd previously thought of doing this sort of like a parody, like a sort of behind the music kind of parody of having. I just always had this fun idea of doing like a review based in a parody of something else. And that's basically what I did with my Star Trek review. The news marches forward. Why women can't captain starships. Taking that idea finally and getting to use that. So that was fun.
Covering up the departure of the lead actors. And they had to shoot so much original footage to facilitate this that it makes one wonder why they didn't just make their own show from scratch, since they probably...
I had plenty to say for this one. I never really shut up. But, yep, that's the end of this one. I'll see you again, or you'll hear me again on the next video.